Let's talk a little bit here about how long this outage may last.
Sure. We don't know. The company hasn't given us any update on the size of the spill or the duration of the outage, but traders have been telling us that they're expecting the pipeline to be down upwards of a week, maybe as long as 2 weeks. One concern is the fact that there's a waterway involved, which can complicate cleanup efforts and might kind of slow bringing things back online.
And Catherine, put what we're learning about today into context, because it feels like we hear about leaks such as this several times over the past couple years. Is this par for the course at this point?
I think leaks are not uncommon on pipeline. Keystone in particular has had quite a few, including a pretty big one in 2019 that was in North Dakota, when many thousands of barrels were spilled, and it took a little while to clean that up. It's definitely not uncommon. I think the bigger question here is what this means for the market, right? And we have a very volatile market with very low liquidity at the moment. So any kind of disruption, especially a major pipeline like this, is going to trigger some pretty massive swings, as we saw today. Oil went up and then it went down, and now we're down again.
Yeah.
We're really struggling to find direction here.
Well, but part of that volatility and part of the lack of direction is that it doesn't really seem like this is sort of organic in nature. I mean, a lot of geopolitical issues have been driving prices this year. Obviously, the war in Ukraine, the biggest one of them all. But we're learning today, of course, about a bill in Congress where the Democrats want to put a windfall tax on some of these oil companies, or oil companies that already have a very contentious relationship with the Biden administration, particularly when it comes to his urging for them to drill more.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a sort of ramping up of the rhetoric here. The dynamic has changed a little bit with the Senate reclinching its majority. With Democrats reclinching their control of the Senate. But it's really nothing new. I mean, Biden Democrats for the last couple of years have been throwing barbs at the oil industry, telling them to bring down prices with one breath by raising production, and at the same time saying that they're reaping too high profits. So I think we're just seeing more of the same. The question is really, will anything come of it? Will these taxes be actually stripped away from these companies? It's kind of hard to say at this point.
Well, it brings us to a really interesting discussion about what kind of scrutiny these big oil giants are under when it comes to their use of cash. I mean, just yesterday, Exxon announcing a pay raise for its U.S. employees, and then also announcing that it was lifting its share buyback program, not just from the administration, but from shareholders as well. How much scrutiny is there on these companies as to what they're doing with these profits?
From my perspective, I don't see that shareholders have much to complain about. I mean, they're the ones who have been asking companies to return more profits back to them, because for many years, oil wasn't doing as well as it's doing now. So I think shareholders really view this recent boom as sort of them getting their due after years of bankruptcies and losses and that sort of thing. And I think that the oil executives, including at Exxon, have been very clear that this is their chance now to repay shareholders for everything that they put in over the hard years.
And shareholders, at least for now, seem to be very content, if not actually happy, I think, with some of the cost discipline here. But what does that mean? Let's bring it back here to the broader story, which is what we pump, what we export, and what we consume here. What's the balance looking like heading into 2023?
The latest estimates that we have from the U.S. government is that our supplies will outweigh demand in 2023. So maybe a small surplus, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of unknowns out there. Like you mentioned, we have a very tense geopolitical situation here. We don't know what's going to happen with Russia, especially as new sanctions on Russian fuel kick in February. There's just a lot of unknowns right now. Will China demand come back?
Yeah.
We have to wait and see.